One. What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks episode 32. And you can tell by the grins on these faces that episode 32 is already special. So we are happy to have Sonny Neville with us today. Sonny was part of one of my group classes that just took the March exam, and he successfully passed, and we're very proud of him. And we wanted to have him on the show today to talk through some of his best study techniques, some of the things he learned along the way. One of the things that I like about Sonny the most, he's a very straight shooter and he's got a lot of great insights. So I'm really excited to have him on the show. And David, this is unique. We got 32. So
it's a good episode because we had about a 5 to 10 minute just briefing before, and it wasn't even a briefing. It was just kind of like, let's just chat, catch up, get to know each other. And I feel like this is going to be an absolutely electric episode.
Yeah.
I think Sonny brings unbelievable vibes. I literally met him 10 minutes ago for anybody listening right now, but this is going to be a great one. So really quickly, Sonny, every episode, Joe and I have started this tradition. This is now the 32nd episode. And starting with episode 23, so it was about 2.5 months ago at this point, we name every episode after an athlete that wore that particular number. So, for example, episode 23, as you could probably imagine, was the Michael Jordan episode. Episode 24 was the Kobe Bryant episode. It doesn't have to be basketball. It just so happened that those two ended up like that. So we're on episode 32. Now, Joe and I have 5 athletes that wore 32 that we can name this episode after. But before I throw them out there, let me ask you, is there anyone with 32 that you could think of off the top of your head?
I just Googled it. I'll go with. I'll go with the one that hit second for appropriateness. I'm pretty sure Shaquille O'Neal wore it.
Okay.
that,
All right. That works. That was one of them.
I didn't want to put the magic on it. You know what I mean?
Well, let me give you the other names that we had. So Shaq was one. You just said Magic. Magic was 2. Dr. J was 3.
Old school.
Karl Malone was 4. So these are all NBA guys. The next guy is a football player. Do you want to try and guess who it is?
Absolutely not. I don't want to.
The juice, baby. The juice. O.J. Simpson.
O.J. Simpson. Yeah, for the fact I'm representing Merrill, I'll pick Shaquille O'Neal.
So the Shaquille O'Neal episode.
Dude, we said this is the CFP Talks. He didn't do it episode.
Except I did, and then we're talking about passing the CFP.
Yeah, you're damn right.
Exactly.
All right, so Sonny, I want to kind of hop into what we were just talking on right before we turned the camera on, but tell everybody just a little bit about yourself. Where are you in your career? What do you do? Where's your career kind of heading? And what kind of got you interested in taking the CFP?
Man, so my career is one that started recently overall. I'm 25. I actually went to school for cellular and molecular biology as a pre-med student. I had a lot of different business ventures. I was in fashion, I was designing clothing. And then through like a bunch of different business ventures and stuff, I recognized attributes of what I did like to do. And I took all those little pieces and I said, hey, maybe finance would be good. And once I kind of took that SIE, it was like, okay, that sealed the deal for my interest as a career. So it was only 2 years ago, 2 years and 2 months, I passed the Series 7. So, since I got licensed, I started off cold calling for Equitable Advisors, as I'm sure a lot of people do for Northwestern Mutual, et cetera. And then I joined Merrill. And right now, I've had a promotion in the company, but I'm on what they call the National Financial Solutions Advisors team. So essentially, we have a book of business, and you deliver financial advice to our clients, sometimes as enrolling clients into your book, as well as just maybe delivering other advice. I wouldn't say holistic financial planning just yet, only because I don't have maybe ties to lawyers and such. But definitely going in that manner. And really, I'm a very motivated person. So I knew as soon as I got really into finance and found out what the CFP was, I was like, okay, I got to have that. I got to differentiate myself from, the pack. I had this person who looked after me for a while, and he was always talking about fish in a big pond, and once you get your CFP, you become a bigger fish and you get moved to a larger pond. And it's always about, making yourself as a different product than those similar to you. And that's the reason why I took the CFP.
It's a great reason, and do you think it's going to become the standard based on what you're seeing? I mean, you're young, I was in your boat. Like I got my CFP about 25, 26 as well. So, I'm looking back at it, I was like, probably one of the best decisions that I made. And I thought at the time it would become the standard that every advisor coming into Smith Barney at the time, it's like, this is going to become standard. And it just didn't. Do you see that more so coming in with people your age, your colleagues, people from college that maybe took similar career paths?
I think it will be for the top dogs, because you need to think about how many people are really in the industry. So for something to become the standard, as a whole, that would mean that, tens of thousands, maybe millions of people are going to be getting that, CFP letters. And I don't think that will be the case, but I think that's going to be the standard for top performers. And if you have the desires to, strive above and really attain something different from yourself, or make it, a great career that you can look back fondly on, or have great career aspirations, I think that will be the standard. And I think it might already be the standard, which is really, that's why I took it.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about your CFP education. Right before we turn this on, you took Dalton. David, did you take Dalton too? I can't remember. So,
No.
no, you
Uh-uh.
did Kaplan, right?
No, I did. So I did. I don't know if it's Bryant University or Boston Institute now. I don't know what it's called, but they may have changed. I did that for my online prep course, which there wasn't really like education. It was just you click through the slides and whatever. And then I did the Danko like self prep course where like he gives you like the 4 books and you go through them and then you sit in on his like 8-hour review virtual session, and that's it. That's what I did.
And did you do something similar, Sonny? So tell a little, and I know you did Dalton. Did you do the accelerated version of the education?
No, so for me to decide to do Dalton, it was a bit of a whim, going out on a whim. I did pass perfect for the 7. I hate how they were too in the weeds for the stuff. I think it was too many trick questions. Then for the 66, I did Kaplan. I think they did a good job. And then just going through a bit of research, I heard Dalton did a good job. And then they did like the guaranteed to pass package, not knowing how much of the material I would really make use of. But I said, hey, you know what? If you're going to, I guess refund me if I fail. I don't plan to fail, but, that's not a terrible thing to enroll in. So I did do Dalton, yeah.
So what did you think of the education program? And I know that, CFP education from the time that I started doing it, and I did it through the College of Financial Planning, regardless of the intention, and I don't think any of those educational providers have bad intentions. But especially when you start truncating the time and it's, we're dealing with a mile of information. What do you think of the education portion? What did you think of how they managed that portion? Do you think that, do you feel like you learned a lot, or do you feel like you were kind of just getting yourself through the education portion and going, pretty much what you said earlier is like, okay, let me just get through this, get it done under my belt, and then I'll start to figure out and do the learning on my own when this portion is done.
Yeah, so it really depends how you learn, but my personal experience is I don't really learn too well in large classes or like pre-recorded sessions. I'm a little too like ADHD for waiting, so I always found myself skipping along in videos. The education portion I thought was pretty good. I thought the textbooks were good. Which is important, as boring and as slow as reading is sometimes, I do find it to be the most successful learning path, at least for me personally. So the learning portion I think was pretty good. A lot went on in the year that I was prepping for it, or from start to finish, I should say. But it's just so much material that I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do what I can do, is like pretty much around the insurance portion of the exam. So really early on, or I'm not the exam, the prep. I knew that it was gonna be so much material that how am I possibly gonna remember all this? I remember talking to a guy who's finishing his CFP, like getting exam prep ready, when I was going through fundamentals. And I was like, oh man, 800-page book. I have a year. I'm gonna crush this. He's like, dude, you're gonna get like 5 more books. This isn't all it. And right there, right. I had the book this thick, and he's like, nah, you're gonna get a
Yeah,
stack of books this
yeah.
thick.
Wait, was that for Dalton? Like Dalton?
Yeah, yeah.
So Dalton, and I didn't take Dalton, and I honestly never really learned about Dalton. But is that the way that Dalton does it? Dalton gives you textbooks, however thick they are, per module, and it's basically on you to read them and do whatever. What's the process there?
Yeah, and I really took this on the chin to make sure I did what I have to do to pass. So exactly, yeah. So I think you had to pass your midterm, and then as soon as you pass your midterm, it triggered something to automatically send you,
Oh, okay,
the next
gotcha.
textbook. So I have all the textbooks, and even going through a review with Joe, I would go back and check terms and things like that. I think the textbooks were great, but like I said, I bought the, guaranteed to pass. I ended up not even really using it. They're talking about, video classes. I don't even know how many people showed up, because I never did show up on, Saturdays and stuff, and things that didn't fit my schedule, because I was working nights at Merrill at the time. So I just, I really just put it on myself to pass, and just read the chapters. Right. They also did great test questions. They have a great test bank, a large test bank. So I
Their
would do,
test bank is tough though, Dalton.
it's very tough. It's very
It
tough, but
really
I don't find like it's past perfect. Past perfect, I think, is unnecessary. Past perfect is like, hey, look left, look right, look center, look backwards, left, forward, which way are you gonna go? Dalton, although they might be a little bit in the weeds, I didn't find them as bad. You get those questions. I'll never forget this question. I even brought it up to Joe. It was a tax question. What is the one deduction an illegal drug operation can write off? And I
Yeah.
don't know if Joe remembers that. I remember bringing it, and I'm like, bro, like, what is this? And for anyone curious, it's cost of goods sold.
The cost of
Like,
your cocaine is a deductible expense.
right. The basis on the bricks was 18K.
What's your brick basis?
Right. So I agree. But it's tough to compare and contrast to what you don't know it's out there. I know a guy who said he was doing Boston, but he never finished it. Also too, he's like a guy with like 3 kids. So lifestyle's a little different. So I just know my own personal experience through Dalton. I think they did an okay job. I really just used the test bank and the textbooks, but their email inbox was very responsive, which I found useful. And I did what I needed to do to get to the end.
Oh,
so.
I like what you said there, and sorry to cut you off, Dave, but I
No,
like
go ahead.
something that Sonny really said was like, I took it upon myself, to do exactly what I needed to do, which is really kind of important. And I don't want to lose sight of that. But David, say what you were gonna say before I kind of dive into that, because
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like you did a decent amount of work with Dalton. So when did you realize that you were like, you know what, screw this, I'm just gonna get through the coursework and then hire a tutor to help me prep for the exam.
Oh, I knew it going into it. So, to give myself a little more background, when I decided I was going to go into finance, I just stopped designing clothing in the fashion industry. I was making clothes for myself or for people. I was selling clothes to people. And I was a pre-med student, and I'm just like, who's going to hire me? And I'm always a person that like time matters. And I just want to succeed on the first time around. And I'd rather pay the extra $1 just to not have to deal with it again. Maybe out of laziness, who knows? So even my Series 7, there was a guy, Capital Advantage Tutoring. I'm blanking on his first name here, but if you Google it, you'll be able to find him.
Yeah.
And I just did a session or two with him. And I was just like, I'm just going to crush the Series 7 first off. I'm not taking the Series 7 again. I passed it. Did the 66. I took his tutor session, I think maybe 1 or 2 right before I took it. I passed that, and I let him know. I think it was like when I was in the insurance section. So before even investments. And I was like, what CFP tutor do you know? And he sent me Joe's name, and I was just sitting on it for just months because I knew they would get to the point where it's like, how do I, out of 5,000 pages of textbooks, how do I know what to look at?
Yeah.
170 questions over 5,000 pages. It's ridiculous.
A good point. It's like they're there's a mile of information. They're going to test you on an inch. You just don't know what inch it is. And so you're kind of stuck in this place where you got to know everything and you got to do everything. So, obviously that kind of takes us to where we met, and you kind of came in a place where we walked out of that assessment session. Kind of talk me through kind of what were you expecting coming into that? How did you feel leaving? Because this is always my favorite part, talking to students, because I'm like, that first impression goes in so many different directions, but there's also a couple coming out. So what were you expecting? And then, when you walked out of that session, how were you feeling?
So what I was expecting, a funny fact, something you don't know. So I lost my financial calculator right before that session, so I bought a new one. And when we went into it and I kept butchering the calculator things, it wasn't set properly for like the intervals of cash flows. So every time me and you kept getting different answers. But I went in there really just being like, okay, is this a guy who am I going to be able to get along with and learn from easily? And that's all I was trying to get out of it, because I know that as long as I have like a good relationship with a business partner in any sense, it will work out fine. So even if you told me you're like, hey, Sonny, you're atrocious, I'd be like, okay, at least I have a solid assessment of where I am now. And now I know where to go for. And that's all I was really looking for, is just the assessment. And we went through some general questions. And from what I remember, at least, you're like, hey, I think you're a great test taker. There's a lot of things you need to go over, because being a test taker is not, it's important, but it's not going to be enough to pass you this exam. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. And I am a pretty good test taker, I'd say, because I just kind of try and think logically of eliminating answers. And I was like, all right, you know what? He's right. Let me just seal the deal. Because, going back on it, if you're listening to this thinking, oh, I just listen to the podcast and try and get as much knowledge as I can, so I don't have to buy some sort of tutoring package. Tell me what you would like to do more. Would you like to save yourself, whatever it costs for whatever tutor package you do, and maybe fail the exam and then have to wait an additional 3 months, pay the board another $800 to $1,000, or just pay X amount of dollars and get the stuff done? I'm trying not to curse.
You could
You
curse.
know.
You could definitely.
Yeah, but I'm here representing my company, so
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
you
There.
know what I mean.
There's no one at Merrill curses.
They definitely don't. Not in recorded meetings.
Nobody on Merrill ever curses.
Yeah, they don't curse there.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's the thing. I just had to really think of it. And it's like, I rather take the L financially up front and secure myself the pass than that awful situation where you just spent all this time and effort and then you submit and he says you failed, and you just know the next 3 months are going to suck.
Yeah.
One
Well,
thing that I remember Joe said, and Joe, is that you just said, I'm going to take the L financially. And of course, like that is one way to look at it. But I remember when Joe, when I were talking, and it wasn't when he was, because he didn't sell me to take his course. I was taking it anyway, but it was probably in the middle when he was like, what, however much his course was at the time, or whatever, however much $1,000 it was. He's like, you do this, you get the CFP, and then you get a client that you bring on X amount of dollars that pays for the course itself. So to look at it as an L financially up front, I get it, but it's also like you're paying to pass the exam. It's an investment in yourself that's going to pay probably, I would say, at least 20 to 30 times itself over the course of your career, if not more.
yeah,
Actually, definitely more than that.
I mean, we aim for 1,000x, right?
1,000x, okay.
Over your career, because I mean, you think about it as a simple NPV problem, right? That's your negative cash flow, and every client that you get because of that course, it's cake, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's icing on the cake right there. Usually, most people break even within one client.
With one client, exactly.
So, Sonny, I want to talk through kind of this process, because we did an 8-week process. You know, you came into class 3 times a week. The class was intense, right? I pushed you guys pretty hard. I asked you to do a lot of reading and a lot of questions. And one of the things that I really liked that you said, and that was very evident in your preparation, and obviously you had other classmates who maybe didn't take it as seriously, or kind of thought that maybe the reading wasn't as necessary or overweighted the questions. And you probably heard me say this in class quite a bit, like you got to read, because you got to know the information exists before you can apply it. And there's 2 great things that I want you to talk about. I want you to talk about that ownership of that process, because you were very independent. You asked a lot of good questions. You took the lead on a lot of stuff in class. And then secondly, you know, when we talked after you passed and we were chatting, probably chat for about 30, 40 minutes, you were telling me like, I'm really glad I went back and did those readings. I was really glad I went back and did those readings. So talk a little bit about the process of studying for the exam, you know, what those 8 weeks were like in terms of intensity, and if you had to point out maybe 2 or 3 things that you think were the difference maker, what would those 2 or 3 things be?
The difference maker by far is actually doing the homework and doing all the readings. Trust me, it sucks, because you assigned a lot of homework readings, and they were textbook pages that were, you know, twice the size of my, you know, laptop screen. And I remember I was working, you know, 9 hours, and then I would get out and I would go read for 6 hours. You know, I would wake up at 6:30. I would read for an hour, and then I would work, and then I would read, and then do the test questions for the next day's session. You know, so the number one most important thing I think is the you know, here's something funny. Let me grab this quickly. Is the reading. So I got this textbook from, or not textbook, I'm sorry, notepad from work, pretty much right when we began doing, you know, our session.
Yeah.
As I was reading, I was writing down notes, and you know, I didn't read through it again because it just wrote too many notes. I filled this entire thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
The entire thing.
Yeah.
You know, off just the readings. And like you said, like taking full ownership. You know, no one's here sitting with the exam with you. Your boss is going to be like, oh, like, it's okay, you didn't fail. Like, at the end of the day, it's your money you're shelling out. Your company is going to pay for it, maybe if you pass it, right? And it's your time you're shelling out. And, you know, it's kind of like a psycho mindset, I guess, to have. But it's like, I told so many people I was taking this exam because I just put that much pressure on myself.
Oh, dude, that's so funny.
That I would pass. I told people back in like July, I was like, yeah, I'm taking this exam in March. Like, I'm CFP. Because it puts credibility too.
Me and David have argued about this. David's like, tell nobody. And I'm like,
I tell
tell
literally,
everybody, so you
dude,
have pressure.
No, I'm the complete. I mean, listen, everybody's different. It sounds like you thrived with that pressure and you wanted that. I tell people, don't tell anybody besides the people that you have to tell, like your parents. If you live with your significant other, obviously she's gonna know, or he or she's gonna know that you're taking it. Maybe your boss or whatever. I tell literally nobody. And that I do that for everything. Like I did that with my driving test when I was 16 years old. None of my friends knew I was taking my driving exam, but I really didn't tell anybody. And I remember when and I actually didn't tell my manager at my previous job when I took it. And I remember I came into work and I was like, I have to take this Friday off because I'm taking the CF. Or I forgot exactly what happened, but she was like, "Oh, why didn't you tell me you were taking it? I would have had the company pay for it, blah, blah." And I was like, you know what? I don't care about any of that shit. I was like, I just didn't want any of the pressure when I went in and took it. I didn't want anybody to know. And if I failed it, I didn't want to have to tell anybody I failed it. That's actually a bigger thing.
But like that's the thing is like both are correct because like
Yeah.
it's whatever gets you in the mind frame. Like,
Yeah.
for me, the more like when I was taking CFA, I told everybody because I needed them to know. So like it was like my motivation at 9 o'clock. I'm like, oh, I told too many people now I can't fuck this up.
Yeah.
But
See
like,
that
you
yeah.
gotta find ways and again, like that for me was like just little seeds of motivation because like 2-3 weeks in, that motivation wears off. And so it's a matter of your habits at that point. The discipline takes over,
Yeah.
but it's really easy, like you said. You're sitting there, you got up early, you're working late. There's no easy way around this exam. You're gonna have to sacrifice in some way. So, continue talking us through, like, you told everybody you're now good. Now you're in this 8 week window. And we had 8 weeks, and then we had, I think, about 2 weeks before the exam that you guys had after class, and we gave you a little buffer. You did a one-on-one in that time, but let's talk through those 8 weeks. You were on top of the homework, you were doing the questions. Again, let's pinpoint some of the things, other than the readings, obviously, which I think is really important. And I say this all the time, and I told you guys in class, David, I told your cohort this. This is an exam of fundamentals. And the better you understood your fundamentals, the better you ultimately do. So, Sonny, what were some of the things, again, that you felt are like, I did these readings, but then these were the other things that kind of really got me there?
Gotcha. And I'll dive into that one quick second. What I would say though, and I don't necessarily, I think I told my mom this, and she's like, "That's not healthy." I was telling my mom, and it's like, anytime I wanted in those 8 weeks, 3 weeks before the exam, whatever. I took it in March. I think it was like from July. Anytime I wanted any rest, I was like, "Is tonight going to be the reason why you fail?" And I was like, "No, it's not." And I just kept going. You know what I mean? And I just kept going until I just couldn't go anymore. And I was like, all right, I need to go to bed. And I probably said that to myself 30 times, where you've been working from 7 to 9 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. and you don't want to do anymore. And it's like, is this going to be the reason why you fail? No, I'm not going to fail. I just kept going. Oh, the other thing I would say is flashcards, though. Any single time I got a single question wrong, doesn't matter if it was on your homework, doesn't matter if it was on my side doing Dalton test bank, I wrote a flashcard of it. I have at least 400 more, 500, 600 flashcards. Disgusting amount. I mean, my mom got me this huge stack. I would write 3 or 4 on every single one, and I just, you also sent me what were they? They weren't Danko, they were what? Zon flashcards.
On flashcards, yeah.
Yeah, so I took the Zon flashcards, I got those, and what I would do, just repetition. I would do all the homework questions you gave me, repetitions all the time, because it would be things that already messed up. And I'd be a little anxious sometimes using Dalton's test bank, like you said, they are pretty difficult sometimes. And they were, and that would almost psych me out a little bit. So I would only do that if I've already done a fair bit of flashcards. They did already all my reading. Because if I didn't do my flashcards yet, there were things that you might get again. I remember after I passed the exam, I called you and we were talking about what was it? It was something about annuity, no, and life insurance, the interpolated, something like that. I don't even remember. But
Yep.
just things like flashcards where it's like things that you think you would remember have seen it again. Well, you've seen thousands of questions, hundreds of questions since then. You need to just realize I've made a mistake in the past. You need to not make those mistakes again.
Hmm. What do you think of that, David? And like,
Well, what?
I'm gonna Venmo you your $50 later for saying flashcards because that makes like it warms me up inside as an educator. That makes me feel so good.
It's true. It's true.
They're
You just need
great.
to know it. Just
The
recognize it.
Zon flashcards are low key probably one of the clutchest study tools that you can use for anybody that's taking the exam or whatever. They are unbelievable. And to add on to that, I'm guessing, Sonny, did you have the physical cards or did you have the digital ones?
Physical. I hate digital flashcards.
Me too. The physical cards are so much more useful and productive and efficient than the digital. Like the digital, I don't understand how people are like, no, I got the digital flashcards. And I'm like, what are you on your laptop clicking swipe, swipe, swipe? Like I need to hold the flashcards in my hand, flip it over, put it down into the pile that's either right or the pile that's wrong. And another thing you can do with the Zon flashcards, and I have mine actually. I took so many notes on the flashcards too. Like
Hmm.
I'd like underline stuff. I was like, oh, I have to know that key term. Or I'd be like, you know what? The flashcard's really good, but there's actually a few more things on that specific topic that I want to make sure that I know that Zon didn't include on there.
Yeah.
So the physical flashcards are unbelievable.
And you got to make it your own. Like you have to put it in your own words because that's the way that you understand it. And that's where a digital flashcard, as convenient as a digital flashcard is. And, I see this a lot with FINRA learners where they love like doing digital, like, and for you guys, even both of your groups, like you guys did do a lot of digital questions, but I had you guys print out and do it as well because there's also something that happens, which is your anxiety levels go up when you have tons and tons of questions in front of you. It's like the Cheesecake Factory menu. Do you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
like I open it up and there's I'm like, oh, I don't know where to even start with this. And it's kind of the same thing. You get a question bank with 5,000 questions. It's not liberty to do 5,000 questions. It's, sometimes you get like, you ever sit down at a restaurant, it's like, how, what wine do you want, red or white? And you're like, I love this place because I only got two choices. Like, go to Trader Joe's. It's great. You want bread? Here, there's three breads. Choose. You want eggs? There's two varieties. There's white and brown. And it's kind of nice in that sense that it kind of helps you focus. And that's when you guys start to make your flashcards your own, and you're holding it in your hand. It's not I'm digitally flipping through 5 million flashcards. It feels good to see all those numbers. You're like, and when you're buying a product like that, it's like, oh my God, there's 5,000 flashcards. I'll know everything. You can't. When you
Yeah.
start to make it your own and then you're repeating that, then that stuff starts to stick, which is, what we're discussing and what we've been talking about over and over. David and I talk about this on the podcast all the time. Your ability to recall the concepts at the right time is one of the more underrated things. A lot of people were like, okay, just give me more practice questions. Well, if you can't recall the right thing for that practice question, you're kind of screwed. And you saw this with a couple people in your class where, like, it was like, okay, I'm just going to do more practice questions. I'm like, no, go back and read, do your flashcards. Like, do you do your flashcards? Well, how are you going to recall the right thing? It's like, and that was the issue that that happens a lot and happened in something that you were very good at. Which I thought was really, really cool. Now, So now you're past the exam, you're in this great space, you're on a great career path, hopefully promotions, new jobs are hopefully sometime in your future. Where do you see yourself now taking this thing and using it in the future? Do you see it more for, I want to sit across clients at their dining room tables and I want to do holistic planning? Do you see this as a route to maybe doing some PM work? Do you see this as like I just want to have better conversations in my current role, and that's the only thing that I'm thinking of right now? Tell us a little bit about where you see you taking this thing.
Yeah, and what before I jump into that, like you said before, people just want to jump into more questions. What's the point in jumping into more questions if you didn't even know why you got the other questions wrong? You're just
Point.
you see it. Oh, I'm gonna go take more questions. I got the other ones wrong. How about
Yeah.
you figure out why you got the other ones wrong before you move forward? You know what I mean? Things like that. So,
Actually, just one more thing. Like that's something David you say all the time. We were talking about the mock exams. We did a whole episode dedicated to mock exams, and David was like adamant about this point. And I think David was probably your golden nugget. Even was like review the mocks, review the mocks, review the mocks,
Yeah.
review the mocks, because you could do 5, 10 mocks and still go in and fail. But that was a really good point of yours. And that's it. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Is that you get a question wrong, the temptation is going, okay, I'll just do another question. I'll just click. I'll just do another question. I'll just click instead of going, okay, let me be stubborn about figuring out why I got it wrong so I don't repeat my mistake. Great point, Sonny. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, you're good. I think the CFP is the opening door to not only having more in-depth conversations with the current clients I have, as well as ones I'll have in the future. But an opening door to continuing education. I learned about different type of pensions and different types of profit sharing plans, and that opens the door to me. I wonder what this is like being an FA who manages an institutional retirement plan. I wonder what that would be like, and that just is going to lead me down a path of learning about more retirement plans and what that would lead to is kind of a business model as an FA or building trust. I mean, obviously I'm not a lawyer. I would have to have some lawyer buds and connects, which I'm sure I'll come across. But wealthy clients who want to make lawyers. I mean, I've even talked to clients recently, and I remember a guy was talking to me. He's like, yeah, he was an older gentleman. I'm trying to, lower my general estate. I got a revocable trust. And I was like, hold on, buddy. That's that's included in your gross estate. You might want to go talk to your lawyer again,
yeah.
and just things like that. And it provides you instant credibility. Or when, because clients generally don't know the in-depth in and outs of finance. And why should they? They have their own professions, and when you could say, hold on, you have the blanket details correct, but you got some of that incorrect and you correct them on that. And you correct them on that just because you've learned this through this year-long process, it instantly puts respect upon your name. Maybe it's yeah, and maybe it's a bit of an elitist view I have, but I'm always one that searches for more respect from individuals, and not saying that I hunt for people to find my respect, but it's like if I see somebody with CFP, it's like my kin, you know what I mean? Respect. You know what I mean? And people say, I told a couple of people that I passed, like, oh, great, I passed. Some FAs over in New York City, and the Saks Avenue, or I'm sorry, the Fifth Avenue office, or the White Plains office, and they realize, oh, this is a talented kid. And I don't think I'll stop at the CFP. It's only been a month since I passed, but it's just opened a door from showing me all the areas of finance. It's like when I took the SIE and realized finance was for me. Now I take the CFP and say, aha, look at all these other areas. Really just opens doors to show how in-depth things can get.
That's a great answer. That is a great answer. You know, when I took CFP, and David, I'm interested to hear because I'm kind of I was saying this to a student today. I said, when I first started as an FA, my CFP would get me in the door. But when people would realize how young I was, I would always have to bring some salt and pepper to the meeting to help me close up the deal. I'm like, shit, I am the salt and pepper now. This is bad, right? You're kind of in between, this young buck and this old dog here. But the one thing that I remember that CFP really helped me realize was that how people weren't as fundamentally sound as you thought they would be. So you get a client coming in with like $1 million and you think, all right, time to do this crazy asset allocation and we're going to get you in these right investments. And you're like, oh shit, they don't have an emergency fund. They don't have a slush fund. They haven't thought about 520. Like none of the fundamental aspects were there. And I think that's what it helps you realize is that when you get educated and you start building the knowledge, you're going, wait, we just need to help people with their fundamentals first. Because I remember one thing that I always kind of blew my mind was how underinsured most people were, especially wealthier individuals, where they were really one bad thing away from being screwed, and they had no idea. And you would see it it would be like, oh, me and my husband, we make 800 grand together. Great. What's your insurance? We have 350,000 of group term. And you're like, holy crap. Like you have 4 million in debt on your balance sheet. Let's shore that up first. And it was like incredible what we would do, like just fundamental stuff. David, you're kind of midway here now, you're now firmly into a planning job. Are you starting to see the same things where you're like, and I really thought I'd be doing all this like high level sophisticated stuff, but the reality is we do fundamentals 80% of the time, and then we do the fancy stuff 20% of the time.
Yeah, and it's funny because you just mentioned, oh, I'm dealing with this client that has $1 million and you think they're going to be so sophisticated.
Yep.
And I'm like really not trying to downplay $1 million because it is definitely a lot of money.
Right.
I can't wait till I could say I have $1 million to invest.
Exactly.
But I feel like, and Sonny, just to give you a little background, I'm an advisor with an RIA, but in Ridgewood, New Jersey. But what you just kind of mentioned, where you're like, you have clients coming in and you think they're going to be so sophisticated, they have all these different things, and you really are just talking about kind of fundamentals like cash flow analysis, income, tax, whatever. I noticed that actually right now with clients that have well more than $1 million. I would say clients, I'm thinking of clients right now that have like $8.5 million, where it's like, all right, we need to make sure that you got your budget right to cover your expenses. It's not talking about necessarily like these fancy estate planning techniques or these fancy trusts that we're going to set up. And sure, they have that with their lawyers, but what we're going over with them is, again, cash flow analysis, budgeting, income and expenses, and stuff like that. And what you realize is, and Sonny, you've been in it for a little bit, Joe's been in it for a long time, I've been in it for a little bit, is that even just like 1 year in the industry, in whether you're in, a client service role or whether you're in an advisor role, whether you're whatever it is, just a little bit of experience, a little bit of education and knowledge, you already have like 95% more knowledge on finance and personal finance than almost everybody that's in your network. That's in your network.
No, most definitely. And yeah, exactly like you said, like the fundamentals. And that's what it really kind of teaches you, just the basics. I mean, you can't get super, super in depth. I mean, just look at when you come across the tax stuff, right? You just reference a single section. It gets too in depth for things. And that's why I said it's kind of just like the opening door to continued education. It just showed me all these areas and then maybe ways to pursue. But, once you recognize, once you promote those fundamentals to a client, it puts credibility behind yourself. You talk to a client who, again, maybe has $650,000 of annual income and, 600K of an annual bonus. And they're like, oh, well, I'm crushing it. Well, I'll tell you how, not really, dude. Your cash flows are super jacked up, so let's go ahead and fix that for yourself. And when you really sit down and put that, you become very credible. And that's just something that I've learned over the course. It's just things that, granted, when I began the course, I was only a year into finance, and now I'm only 2 years and 2 months. But instantly, I have individuals who are in their 50s and 60s, the age of my parents and older, who come to me with their financial questions. So sure, I might be the young buck, but I'm a credible young buck. And would you rather be credible and young, or would you rather be experienced and old and maybe not know what you're talking about in some scenarios?
Yeah, and it's a good thing because you realize that most of your clients have been very good at accumulating money, but they've kind of like it's kind of, and this is becoming more and more of the norm, right? Like if you ask somebody like what their fitness routine is, they're like, yeah, I listened to a podcast and I took this from here, I took this from here, and this from here, and this from here. This has been happening for years in finance, where even when I was seeing clients, in the pre-podcast era, they would just say, I met this advisor, I got a cold call, so I bought this product and I bought this product. And I'd be looking at their portfolio like, what is this? This is like a mishmash of crap. And when you start setting people up and they're like, and making it simple, and I'll tell you, we went through all the complicated stuff in CFP just to make somebody else's life simple. And I think that's probably was my favorite takeaway from it.
And a lot of like the really, really in-depth stuff that you learn, it's there so you have it in your holster. Like, I don't know, a lot of the estate planning, like a dynasty trust. I've never talked about a dynasty trust. Have you, Sonny, have you? Like I don't anticipate.
You guys will. You'll come across a big fish where that's necessary.
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. But what it does, it gives you, number one, the confidence, and the confidence knowing that you have a lot of ammo in your pocket, that you can cover a lot of different things. And not that it's all about, whining and dining and sounding hot, but you are able to speak in a sophisticated manner where people are going to be like, I'm impressed with this kid, or I'm impressed with this guy. Like, he knows what the fuck he's talking about. But that to me is the whole thing with the exam, is like, on the 7, yeah, you learn stuff, but realistically, a lot of that shit I don't talk about, like, literally ever. The 63 or the 66, same thing, insurance, whatever. The CFP, I remember saying to Joe, and I said to Alex, who's my fiance, I was like, even if I fail, and I actually, Sonny, I did fail the first time I took it. Then I went to Joe and he helped me pass. But I remember thinking to myself, and I said this, I was like, even if I fail, I learned a shit ton that I would not have known if I didn't study for this exam. So the worst case scenario is I fail, but I learned a lot about planning and finance.
Yeah.
No.
It's interesting, and sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but to that point, David, the things that I would help my clients with the most, like the things that would blow their mind, mortgages. If you understood it, like how many people truly, and I was saying this to somebody the other day, I'm like, and we're doing a unit on mortgages right now. And I said, this is stuff that he's like, oh, I'm gonna buy a house, so I really want to pay attention. I'm like, I said, how much of this information did you know? We're like 2 lessons in. He's like, honestly, so I feel like my mind is blown because you see this stuff. You see it in financial magazines, you see emails, you read about it, but you never really have a sense of how interest really works in a mortgage. And he's like, So and we were going through like a $500,000 mortgage and putting money into the mortgage early versus later. And he's like, $10,000 up front saves you 40 grand over the life of the loan. He's like, that like it like blew his mind. But and the thing is that that those things that blew your mind initially are exactly what are going to blow your clients' minds as well, because
Right.
and I also felt that also the other part of it was like I also felt that half of our jobs was just talking clients out of blowing themselves up by doing something stupid. It was like, well, I'm gonna do this reverse arm mortgage repo debt thing that AARP called me about, and I'm thinking about doing it because it sounds, and I'm like, no, no. Like I had a buddy who called me up one time, and I've been giving him and his wife financial advice for 15 years now. And they're like, this person approached us about doing this savings program where they take over your checking account. And I'm like, nope, nope.
What the fuck is that?
He's like, okay, good. I thought it sounded like fraud. It was too good to be. I'm like, nope. And he's like, and I was like, literally for the last 15 years, 90% of the stuff that I do with them is they call me with, this person called us or our friend, or we met this person at a, I'm just like, nope, no. I'm just like, I feel like finance daddy just saying no all the time. Like, you will not have fun.
Yeah. But what you said maybe 5-10 minutes ago about the clients are really good at accumulating wealth. And you know what I say to clients frequently when they say they don't, I say something like, oh, I wasn't aware of that. I'm gonna say, why would you be aware of it? This isn't your career. You're in engineering, you're in, HR, public health, whatever you're in, politics, whatever. You're not in finance. You know what I mean? And I tell the clients, I'm like, yeah, you should see me try and change my tire because I can't. I don't, bro. You know what I do? I call AAA, and like what you are to these clients is you're a financial AAA.
Yeah.
So, and like, what do you do? What do you expect when you call AAA? You expect them to, be able to answer your questions. And that's what the CFP has allowed me really to do, is to arm me with the knowledge of answering a variety of questions. So when things go wrong with their finances, I can answer it, just like when I ask AAA why my car won't start, or how I, put back on a tire or something, foolish. They can tell me. And that's what you are to these people. Just like you have a mechanic to fix your car, you have a financial advisor to fix your finances.
Amazing, amazing. Let's kind of close it on here, and David and I have a tradition of ending with a golden nugget. But since you are a guest of honor, this will be Sonny's golden nugget. We even have a theme song. Sonny's golden nugget. So you're studying for July. You're going in for November, and you're kind of sitting there. You're kind of overwhelmed. You're anxious. You don't know where to get started. Give somebody a little nugget of wisdom now that you're on the other side of this, of what they should do. I'm struggling. I don't know where this is not working for me. I need help. You know, talk a little bit about, and I love what you said earlier, where you said, I went in and I have no problem giving other people credit. I think the inclination is that we want to do this on our own. Ownership and getting help are not mutually exclusive. Those are two things that you can still be the owner of your progress, but there's no shame in getting help along the way. And so tell everybody kind of a little bit about what you think would be. This is a little nugget of wisdom. And you can even have two, Sonny. You can have two golden nuggets.
I'll do 2 golden nuggets. I'll give you the double trouble.
Yeah.
Do all the homework and get Joe Nissim as a tutor.
All right, shameless plug. Okay, not
No, but in all seriousness, seriously, if you can't handle it yourself, recognize that early and come to, a shameless term of that and just go get a tutor. Because you go get somebody who's passed it before and can, give you the time required and tell you what to study. There's 8,000 pages in all those textbooks or something, 5,000 pages. You're going to get 170 questions. How do you know what to study? You need somebody to pass it and who tells people how to pass it.
Oh, I'm good with that. I mean, I can't lie. It feels good.
I thought his golden nugget was actually going to be, if you are an illegal drug dealer, just know you can deduct the cost of goods sold. That was mine.
Credits
No.
to Dolan.
I mean, brick cogs are they're rising faster than inflation. So just
I know, dude. I know, especially with the transportation costs.
well, Sonny, thank you so much for being on. We loved having you on. This was a really fun episode to do. Great laughs, great fun, and a lot of great nuggets. So thank you so much for doing this. For those of you who are taking the exam and you have questions, feel free to reach out to myself, to reach out to David, and we will see you guys next week. Have a great week, everybody.